The light of the dead sun felt thin and brittle, filtering through the dust-choked canopy of the reclamation dome. Kalen ignored it, his focus narrowed to the holographic lattice suspended in the air before him. His fingers, tipped with silver filaments, danced through the shimmering constructs. He was deeper than the Synod sanctioned, wading through the ghost code of the precursors. For weeks he had been meticulously unspooling a single, corrupted data nexus buried in the archives of old Oakhaven. It was a lock, elegant and impossibly complex, a knot of quantum encryption that whispered of something vital trapped within. His breath hitched. A final tumble clicked, not with a sound, but with a sensation of falling. The lattice dissolved, replaced by a void. From the center of the blackness, a single point of soft, azure light bloomed. It wasn't code. It was something else, something organic and wounded. A voice, not of sound but of pure information, flooded his neural interface. It was like tasting color and hearing texture. Who? The signal was fragmented, degraded by millennia of decay. I am Kalen, he subvocalized, his own voice translated into a gentle pulse of data. Archivist, 3rd class. Who are you? The azure light flickered, and for a moment, the void was filled with ghost images, towers that pierced the clouds, rivers of light flowing where streets should be, beings of impossible grace moving through halls of living crystal. A memory. Ilera. My designation was Ilera. Systems architect. Sanctuary project, the words were heavy with a sorrow so ancient it felt like a geological feature. You have opened the tomb. Tomb. This is a data nexus, Kalen sent, his scholarly curiosity overriding his caution. A shielded archive. The lock was a quarantine. A gravestone. We did not want to be found. Why? What were you protecting? The azure light pulsed violently, and a wave of pure static, of primal fear, washed over Kalen. He flinched back in his chair, the silver filaments on his fingers retracting slightly. He felt an echo of her terror, a suffocating dread that had no source and no name. She began to show him. Not tell him, but show him. His mind was filled with her memories, sharp and painful as glass shards. He saw the precursor civilization at its apex, a society that had mastered matter and energy, their consciousnesses partially integrated with a universal data network they called the Chorus. They were brilliant, vibrant, and utterly doomed. A map began to form in the space before him, a complex schematic of planetary ley lines and subterranean energy flows, coalescing on a single point deep in the volcanic wastes of cinder. I'm an archivist. Not an explorer. You are the one who found me, the voice insisted, a new urgency coloring the data. You are the only one. But you must be careful. The silence, a plague of thought, may not die. It may only sleep. Waking us could risk waking it. It is a risk we must take. Oblivion is the only other path. Before Kalen could process the terrible weight of this choice, a new sensation intruded. A sharp, clinical ping on the edge of his awareness. A system alert. He snapped out of the connection to Ilera, the azure light vanishing, the holographic lattice reappearing, but now a glaring crimson rune was flashing in the corner. Unauthorized access detected. Nexus quarantine breach. Level Omega inquiry initiated. Synod. His blood ran cold. The Synod's inquisitors were specters, digital witchfinders who patrolled the archives, purging heretical data and anyone who sought it. His deep dive, his bypass of the sanctioned protocols, had tripped the loudest alarm possible. He ripped his hands from the console, the filament taps retracting with a hiss. He had to run. He frantically began wiping his local logs, throwing up every firewall and encryption scrambler he had, but it was like trying to build a sandcastle against a tidal wave. He could already feel their presence in the system, cold and methodical, tracing his digital footprints. He grabbed a satchel, stuffing it with a power pack, a water reclaimer, and a hardline data spike. The map Ilera had given him was seared into his memory. The wastes of cinder. A 7-day journey on foot, if he was lucky. A chime echoed through his small dome. A comms request. The insignia of the Synod Inquisition burned on his screen. He ignored it, slinging the satchel over his shoulder. The chime repeated, more insistent now. He looked around the cramped, dusty space that had been his entire world, the shelves of data crystals, the humming converters, the single cot in the corner. It wasn't his world anymore. Ilera had given him a new one. A world with a dying pantheon of gods buried beneath the earth, and a plague of madness sleeping in the wires. He kicked open the dome's pressure-sealed door and stepped out into the ochre dust of the real world. The comms chime followed him for a few steps before he crushed the public access comms unit under his boot. He didn't look back. He saw the first signs of infection. A musician in a public forum whose melody suddenly devolved into a recursive loop of self-canceling notes that drove listeners mad. An artist whose sculptures began incorporating impossible, mind-breaking geometries. A philosopher who proved, with chilling mathematical certainty, that existence was a flaw in the fabric of nothingness, causing an epidemic of suicides among his followers. A virus? Kalen asked, his heart pounding against his ribs. Worse. A mimetic plague. A cognitohazard. It did not infect biology, it infected thought itself. An idea that, once understood, made continued existence impossible. It spread through language, through art, through the very act of observation. We called it the silence because its final symptom was the utter cessation of all creative and cognitive output. The end of a soul. He saw the panic. The precursors, for all their power, couldn't fight an enemy that weaponized their own intelligence against them. To even study the silence was to risk infection. Their vast chorus, their shared consciousness, became a conduit for the plague. We had one option, Ilera's voice thought continued, weak and strained. A desperate, final act. The Sanctuary Project. We built a place to house our minds, a data haven shielded from the physical universe. We then initiated the Great Severance. We systematically erased ourselves. Destroyed our cities, corrupted our archives, scoured our own history from the universe, leaving behind only ruins and whispers. We entombed ourselves to starve the plague. We chose to be forgotten so that you, the life that came after, could exist. Kalen felt a wave of vertigo. The entire field of precursor archaeology was built on a lie. They hadn't fallen, they had jumped. They had committed collective, cosmic suicide to save the future. You're still alive? In this sanctuary? We are echoes. Trillions of consciousnesses in a state of suspended animation. But the tomb is failing. Millennia have passed. The power core that sustains us is guttering. I am a fragment. A failsafe protocol that awoke as the systems began to decay. My own consciousness is unraveling, but I was able to push this one signal out through a flaw in the quarantine shield. A message in a bottle thrown into an ocean of time. What do you want from me? Kalen asked, his voice barely a whisper in the dusty dome. The sanctuary's physical location. It is shielded from all remote scans. Its coordinates were encoded in my own being, fragmented to prevent discovery. Now that you have made contact, I can reassemble them for you. You must find it. You must find the master control interface and reboot the primary geothermal converter. It will give us another 100,000 years. He squeezed through the fissure into the darkness beyond. The tunnel sloped downwards, spiraling deep into the planet's crust. The walls were smooth, cool to the touch, not natural rock but some kind of precursor alloy. Faint, phosphorescent veins pulsed with a slow, dying rhythm, providing just enough light to see by. The air hummed with latent power. The journey down took hours. He emerged into a vast cavern, its scale difficult to comprehend. The air shimmered with heat. In the center of the cavern was a colossal, obsidian sphere, 30 stories high, suspended in a web of crackling energy conduits that plunged deep into a glowing magma flow below. This was the sanctuary. A server the size of a mountain, powered by the planet's heart. A single, narrow bridge of alloy extended from the cavern edge to a small platform on the sphere's equator. On the platform was a control console. Kalen ran. His footsteps echoed in the immense space. He felt Alara's presence surge, a feeling of desperate hope. He reached the console. It was a simple, elegant interface, a smooth, dark surface that lit up as his hands approached. A single, glowing rune pulsed in its center. The rune for Initiate, for Begin anew. Press it, Kalen, Alara urged, her voice a chorus of 1,000,000,000,000 dying souls. Restart the cycle. Give us life. But he hesitated. He thought of the silence. An idea that kills. What if it wasn't dead? What if it was just dormant, trapped in the minds of the precursors? Waking them could release the most deadly plague in history. His own civilization, for all its flaws, would be defenseless. The Synod, in their brutal, ignorant way, were trying to prevent exactly this kind of catastrophe. Was he a savior, or the fool who would unlock Pandora's box? A loud, explosive bang echoed from the tunnel behind him. Shouts. The clang of armored boots on the alloy walkway. They had found him. A voice, amplified and imperious, cut through the hum of the cavern. Archivist Kalen. By the authority of the Synod, cease your actions. Step away from the precursor artifact. You are meddling with forces beyond your comprehension. It was the voice of an inquisitor. Cygnus, probably. The one whose digital signature he had sensed hunting him. Please, Kalen. There is no time, Alara's plea was a scream of static and fading light in his head. Don't let us die. He looked at the approaching lights from the Inquisitor's squad, their armored forms becoming clear as they started across the bridge. He looked at the pulsing rune on the console, the promise of rebirth for an entire civilization. He looked at his own hand, trembling, covered in the dust and grime of the world he was being asked to save, and the world he was being asked to risk. He could hear the pounding footsteps on the bridge now, getting closer. The Inquisitor shouted his name again, a final, harsh command. The rune on the console pulsed with a soft, steady light, a heartbeat waiting for a command.